Hello guys, welcome to Astram Veda. This is welcome to Node.js tutorial series. This is the fourth video. In previous videos we discussed about first we learned how do we install Node.js in our system, and then we also learned how to do a basic Node.js system setup in our system. We tried running the server and we did it successfully, and after this we learned different type of databases and how and when we should use which particular database, and we also learned to go with MongoDB and created MongoDB Atlas setup, and using that particular setup we learned how to connect MongoDB with our Node.js backend. So now in today's video we will be learning to create our very first API, and after learning the first API we will be working on an entire project. We will be learning backend through means of a project. So we will be making a library management project. So I will be teaching you how production basis or big application basis backends are set up. Once what you see in different web application, you come across how their database is set up, what are different. So let's head back to the screen. So here, first of all, let's come to the first API. What actually is API is. So in API, if I talk about I always teach you with the example of a restaurant. So suppose you are on a table and now you call a waiter to order some food. Now waiter takes your order, he goes to the, I can say, chef, and then he prepares the dish, and once dish is prepared, the waiter brings that dish back to you. So here you are the user, the client, front-end website is the client, and in this case is the user, you who are eating at the restaurant, and API is something which is bringing data from which is bringing your request to the, I can say, chef, and once your order is prepared, bringing that prepared order back to you. So the role of APIs is similar. You request a particular data from backend server. So it takes your request, send it to backend server, then backend server process the request, creates the data, and it returns the data, and API brings back this particular data whichever is requested from backend to the user. So role of APIs is to it acts as a mediator between front end and backend. So every API is having majorly 3 parts, out of which one part is optional, but rest 2 parts are mandatory. So first part is route, or sometimes we called endpoint. Endpoint is it is the actual name through which we call a particular API. Suppose there are n number of friends in a room, then how you will call a particular room? By help of their name. So similarly, there are different functions which run on server, which we call controllers in the terms of APIs. And how do we call a particular controller? How do we call a particular function? How do we get a particular set of data? So for getting each particular set of data, we have defined certain functions in our backend server. So with the and for each particular controller function, we have given a particular name. That particular name we called as endpoint, or we call it is an API string. So in endpoint also there are 2 basic parts. First one is base URL, and the last one is the actual endpoint. So I'll bring I will show you in details how it happens. And before this, also now we understood what actually a route is now and what actually a controller is. Then there is again a optional part. Every API doesn't need it, but yes, certain or almost 70% or 80% of our APIs need that part, but yes, 20% API can work without it. So third part is model. Model decides what kind of data we are storing for a particular entity. Suppose we are dealing with is a library management system. We will be making a library management system backend. So in library management system, suppose there are different entities, like library users are there, then library staff is there. Library has their own inventory, like they have their own desk, their shelf, then they have collection of books, then they manage different like borrow request, like if the user is borrowing some book or after this they are returning it. So we call it as a different entity in the terms of backend. So every entity has a set of data. So suppose a user is there, then user must have a name, they must have an address, then have a particular ID proof through which we are verifying the authenticity of the user. We have the user's password, we have their contact address, we have their photo. And if we talk about library staff, they also have their roles. Different person perform different activities, so they have been assigned certain roles, and they have their identity. Again, they have their family details mentioned with the library. They have their bank account so that salary can be transferred. So there are different kind of data which are associated with particular object or with particular unit in any application. So our model decides what kind of data a particular, all the data which a particular entity will hold. So in model we write. So let's heads back to the screen so that we can learn how to create a very first API. So guys, till now, if you like the learning, you can put comments if you are facing any issue, and if you're liking the content, you can subscribe for further videos. So let's head back to the screen. Let's head back to the project which we created on our last session. So I am just opening this particular video. I opened with VS Code. I have already told you like how do we open it in VS Code. If you are struggling, you can check out my previous videos. Link is in the description. So our project is ready. I'm just starting it. So last time I told you to start our Node backend project in Node. We simply have to write npm start. So now our project is starting, and as you can see, it is taking little time. It takes usually 10 to 15 seconds. So now you can see two messages, like first our server is started, and then it connected to MongoDB. So it is already connected to our backend. So guys, excited to create your first API? So let's do it. So for as I already told you, and every APIs are having three major parts. We have controller, then we have models, and we have routes. So let's create each one by one. So for this, in the root directory of your application, create three folders. First one is for model we created, then second one we need for controllers, then we need to make it for routes. So first we will start with the basic APIs just to understand how APIs work. Then we will start implementing through a project. We will be creating our basic like end-to-end project, a library management system, and parallelly we will keep learning various like steps or various aspects of backend development through examples. So first we decide a controller, but before going to this, first let's work on a route. So in our routes we will be adding a file. You can give it any name, but as a general standard practice, if it is an initial file of a particular directory, so we give it as a name as index.js. You can give it either name, whatever route you want. So now we need const so we need to import express Now we need to write router, which is like express.router. Again, we installed this package express. So express is again help us in creating routes of an application, routes or endpoints. So now we simply we created one object using this express.router, and using this object we will be creating our endpoints. So first endpoint we will be creating is of type get. Don't bother if you are not aware about the what this get is, no issues. I will be teaching you. I'm writing hello/user, and here I am passing some variables to them. What those variables are, no issues, we will. And now I'm exporting this particular route so that I can use this particular route in different other files. So I have already created and then as you are already familiar with JavaScript, I hope this, and if you are not, you can look to my other tutorial videos about JavaScript. So here is like we passed an arrow function. So here this arrow function will act as a controller. So controller means like when user will call this particular endpoint from his system hello/user, then this controller, this arrow function will run. So what we are doing in this arrow function, we are doing res.send. So what is this res? So every controller function by default is having two object, request object and response object, which are like given by express. So request object contains all the information coming from request, user request. Suppose when you call a particular API, then you send certain data. You ask like I need this data, I need suppose you are on Facebook, then you log in. So when you log in, at the time of login you pass your username and your password. So this is the data which you pass from the client, and this data comes here and we access in request object. And then after all the calculations, all the fetching from databases are done, and when we are about to send the response to the user back, so at that time we use response object. So response object have certain functionalities, certain parameters which we utilize to make send response to the client. We will be learning these things. Don't get bothered if you are very new to all these things, no issues. So we just created our very simple API. So now what we do, we go to our main file which I taught you in the last video, is index.js. In index.js we need to import our router. So I just imported my router and I gave the path. Since route directory is in same folder, so I will use /. If both the directory are in same like both share the same parent, then we use /. But if you want to go back in the chain, then we use double dot, so it goes back to the previous directory. So right now we will be using this, and as per suggestion, since I can see index file and route both are in same, that is why it is coming as .routes, and then in routes we have index.js file. Now we will be using a middleware, and in this middleware I will be passing and here we will pass the router thing. So our server is running. Congratulations. So our very first API is I am hitting the request from my own server or on own laptop. Like this browser is running on the same laptop in which our Node server is there. Our Chrome browser. So we will be right now localhost. As I know, it is asking for the port. Port is again 3000. If your port is 3002, you can use 3002. If your port is 3000, you simply use this. After this, it will ask /API /v1 / now what will happen when you will hit this point? It says suppose your computer having multiple servers are running. One is for one project, one is for another project, one is for like front end part, one is for back end part. So with the help of port, it get to know that this particular request to be sent to which particular server, your backend server 1, backend server 2. So it decides. So whatever port is like passed after localhost, so request will go to that particular server. So this localhost colon 3000 tells us go to our check in our own system and look for any application which is running on port 3000. So as soon as it goes, and I have already told you, whenever any outer communication comes to our application, it comes to our very first file, which is by default index.js. So this code comes here, and after this it finds API /v1 where it is written in the routes. So it finds this particular this thing. When it goes to API v1, then we need to pass further details about the route. Like we could have n number of route. One is for login, one is from sending OTP, one is for like verifying the OTP, one is for getting the list of user, one is for deleting the list of users. There could be n number of endpoints in our application. So we need to tell exact address that which particular request we want to, which particular controller we want to revoke. So here in the router we passed .get and we passed a certain name. So we will simply write /hello/user. So as soon as I click on it, see, I got the response. Hey, it's a magic. So what is happening? It goes to my own system. It goes to application running on port 3000. And in this application it goes to the main file which we made in our JSON, which was index.js. So it goes to now you must be confused, like there are n number of, like there are multiple index.js. No worries, it can internally bifurcate, like if it is in the root folder and there is index.js, then it is the main file. So our node server is smart enough to handle this. So it goes and then it checks, okay, API, I have to go to API v1. So it went to API v1. Then it finds there are certain more details written mentioned in the route. It is hello/user. So what, to find it further, since it is not finding any similar role, if there were multiple things like app.use, then it has more API/v2. So it would try to find in other routes, but since it found only one route, so it will now try to, in order to find key if there is some more data, it will go in this particular route. Here in this route it will find, oh, here is hello/user. So entire endpoint which matched, we call, so it will, once it is matched, it will run the particular function. So in this function, what we have done, response.send, yani user send the response to user, and in this response hello user must be written. So we received hello user. So now in the beginning we write controller. So this function is actually a controller. So what will happen, suppose there is this application grows, it is a very simple route, but in actual applications like each controller has like 200 line of code, 300 line of code. So is it good to like write all the code in a single file? No, it's not a good practice. So what we do, we just break our code into smaller chunks, because of which what we do, in controllers we define our functions which are called on a particular route. So now in controller, again I am making an index.js file, and here I will write a function which is say hello, and in this I will say request comma response. First request comes, because when request will come, then only response is sent. So if always keep in mind, request comes, then only response goes. So request, then response, and then we select it at like this, and I say response dot send. Now I'm writing hello world, and now I am exporting this particular function. Now I have exported it. Instead of like using that inbuilt controller, what I will do in my routes, I will use this function. So how I will use const. So I have imported it from the controller file. So it is controller slash index.js. So now instead of this, I will simply pass this say hello function. So now it is like quite clean code. Good code is like which is quite like easy to understand and read. Suppose it is like a general purpose language, like we are writing reading an essay. If it is written in good handwriting and all things are like it is properly defined into different paragraphs, then it is a good essay we will consider. Similarly, it happens in our coding. So guys, congratulations, we have created our API, first API, and we have tested it. So in our API there are two main points. First one is this will remain common for all the applications running, all the APIs which we will make in this particular server, and these endpoints will keep changing. So each API has two parts, base URL and then endpoint. So base URL remains constant, which defines the address of the server, and then we have the endpoint. This endpoint defines which particular controller will run. So guys, we are done for today's video. In next lecture we will be learning like how do we set up a library management system, how we will define models for different entities. We will do the brainstorming, how brainstorming is done. So